My brother got my fiancée pregnant right before our wedding, so I broke his face and ruined their lives. Let me start from the beginning because this is still blowing my mind. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and until a few months ago, I thought my life was going in the right direction. I was engaged to my girlfriend of 5 years, Tina. I love her, man. I thought she was the one, and for 5 years everything seemed to be falling into place. But then it all crashed down hard, and now I'm talking to Reddit because I need to. Let me get this off my chest before I lose it completely. My family is a big part of why this whole thing is such a mess. I have a younger brother named Adam, and for as long as I can remember, he has been my parents' favorite. It wasn't like typical sibling stuff where one kid gets a little more attention. Adam was the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents had his back. If he broke a lamp, it was my fault because I should have been there to stop him. I was the one who set a bad example for Adam when he skipped school. It was like living in a messed-up twilight zone where he could never do wrong and I could never do anything right. The worst part was that my parents, Bill and Susan, acted like it was totally normal. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, I was able to leave that toxic house when I went to college. I paid for everything myself with no help from my parents, because all their money went to Adam. He decided after one semester that college wasn't for him. I wasn't even surprised when my parents threw him a big party for following his heart or whatever they came up with. They bought him a new car so he could explore his passions. But that's just background info. The real story is how Adam, the golden boy, somehow managed to do the one thing I never thought he'd do. He destroyed my life in a few months. I was engaged to Tina and we'd been together for a long time. For 5 years, and honestly I thought I was finally building something solid. Tina was smart, funny, drop-dead gorgeous. Basically she was the dream girl. I'd met her through one of Adam's ex-girlfriends at the time, and things clicked between us right away. I should have known there were red flags, though looking back now, here's the thing with Adam. He was always sniffing around my life. No matter what I did, he'd somehow find a way to one-up me or weasel into my business. Got a new job, suddenly Adam's talking about his exciting business idea, start dating Tina. All of a sudden, Adam is really interested in what I'm doing and is always asking about Tina. At the time, I thought he was just happy for me, but now I feel like an idiot for not seeing it. Tina and I had been living together for about a year before I proposed. It was nothing big, just a quiet night at home with a nice dinner, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes, and I felt like everything was coming together. We weren't in a hurry to get married. We were both working long hours to save up for the wedding and a house. Life was busy, but it felt good. For once, I wasn't thinking about all the crap my family had done to me. I was just happy. But then Tina started acting strange. You know how sometimes things just feel off? She was on her phone a lot, always texting, and when I asked who it was, she said it was a friend from work. She went out with her friends more and came home late smelling like booze and some kind of cologne I didn't recognize. I trusted her. I never thought she would cheat. Then one night, she hit me with the news that turned my world upside down. She was pregnant. At first I didn't think anything of it, right? I was actually kind of excited because we talked about having kids before, but then she dropped the bomb. The baby wasn't mine. I was stunned, like completely frozen. My first question was the obvious one, who's the father? And she just broke down crying, couldn't even look me in the eye. She finally whispered, it's Adam, my younger brother, my freaking brother. Man, I think in that moment my brain just couldn't process what was happening. My fiancée was pregnant, not by some random, the same brother who took everything from me when I was growing up and who my parents always chose over me. I kicked her out right then and there. I didn't want to hear her excuses or see her tears. All I could feel was this burning rage inside me. I knew I couldn't be around her anymore. She tried to apologize and begged me to listen. But what was I supposed to say? The woman I was going to marry had been sleeping with my brother. Now she was pregnant with his child. After I got her out of the apartment, I called Adam. I don't even remember what I said, but I know it wasn't calm. Adam, of course, tried to brush it off as a one-time thing. He even had the nerve to tell me it didn't mean anything. He knocked up my fiancée, and I'm supposed to believe it was nothing? When I pushed him for more, he got defensive and said, maybe if you'd been a better fiancée, she wouldn't have come to me. That's when I lost it. I drove straight to his house, ready to break something. I wasn't thinking straight, and I wasn't even sure what I was going to do, but I was so angry that I didn't care. When I got there, guess who was already waiting for me? My parents. Yeah, Adam had called them, probably to try to spin the story so they would back him up like they always do. And surprise, surprise, they did. My mom started crying and talking about how family needs to stick together, and my dad just stood there looking at me like I was the problem. Adam, on the other hand, had a smug look on his face like he knew he was going to get away with it. That's when I snapped. Years of frustration, anger, and resentment all came pouring out. I told them all to go to hell. I told my parents they could have Adam because I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. I told Adam he was dead to me, and I meant it. After that, I drove off without even knowing where I was going. I just needed to get away from all of them. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about my life had just been blown apart, and I had no idea what I was going to do. He had a look on his face that said he knew he was going to get away with it. That's when I lost it. Years of anger, frustration, and resentment came pouring out. I told them all to go to hell. I told my parents they could have Adam because I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. I told Adam he was dead to me, and I meant it. I drove off without even knowing where I was going. I just needed to get away from them all. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about my life had just been blown apart, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. What to do next? After kicking Tina out and telling my whole family to screw off, you'd think that would be the end of it. Wrong. That was just the beginning. I thought I could just pack up and move on with my life, but my family wasn't going to let it go that easily. I didn't even have a chance to breathe before they started coming at me from all sides. The next day, I'm sitting in my apartment trying to figure out what to do. I barely slept, my mind racing, and every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying that conversation with Tina. Tina kept saying, "I'm pregnant and it's Adam's fault." It was like a loop I couldn't get out of, and it was really messing me up. Anyway, I was sitting there looking at my phone when it started buzzing like crazy. Guess who it was? My mom. I knew exactly what the call was about, but for some dumb reason, I thought maybe she'd finally see things from my side and say, "Hey, Adam really messed up, and we support you." Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. I picked up the phone, and before I could say anything, my mom said, she starts yelling at me, "What are you doing, Jacob? You're tearing the family apart over a mistake." She calls it a mistake, like Adam accidentally getting my fiancée pregnant the way you might accidentally spill a drink. She keeps going on about how I need to forgive him, how family is the most important thing, and how I'm being selfish for not working it out with him. At this point, I'm sitting there with my phone in hand and staring at the wall while she's talking, and I'm thinking, is this for real? Am I the crazy one here? She finally stops to take a breath, and I cut her off and say, "Mom, Adam is dead to me. You can take his side all you want, but I'm done." Then I hung up. It wasn't satisfying, though. In the movies, people hang up the phone and feel powerful or something, but I just felt empty. I knew that no matter what I said, nothing would get through to her. That's when things really started to go downhill. I thought, okay, I'll just block their numbers and be done with it. But no, my family wasn't going to let me walk away that easily. It was too easy for her to leave. The next day, my mom showed up at my apartment. I didn't even know how she found out where I had moved. But there she was, standing outside my door with a look on her face like she had been wronged. She started banging on the door and yelling for me to open it. I was sitting on the couch with my head in my hands because I didn't want to deal with it, but she wouldn't stop, so I finally got up and opened the door. There she was, tears in her eyes, holding a baby picture of me, and Adam like that would magically fix everything. I swear my patience was hanging by a thread. I told her, "Mom, Adam crossed a line he can't come back from. He didn't just steal my bike or my video games. He ruined my whole life." But she just kept going, "Man, he's sorry. Like that would fix anything. He's made a mistake, but you can't just give up on your family like this. You're the one who's supposed to be the bigger person." That's when I lost it. I couldn't hold back any longer. I told her everything I'd been holding back for years. "You always choose him. You always pick Adam. I was never good enough for you, was I? Well, now you can have him because I'm done with both of you." She stood there frozen, as if she didn't expect me to snap like that. I wasn't going to yell, but all the years of being second place and being ignored came out. She started crying, But this time I wasn't going to play the guilt game. I told her to leave, and when she wouldn't, I grabbed her. I told her I was going to call the cops if she didn't leave, and she finally did, but not before telling me, "You're going to regret this. Family is all you've got. Thanks for that, Mom." After she left, I thought maybe that would be it, like maybe they would finally get the hint. But no. That same day, Adam texted me, acting like nothing had happened and saying, "Look, bro, I'm sorry about what happened, but let's not make this a big deal. It's not like I meant for it to go this far." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Across the room, not a big deal, dude knocked up my fiancé, and he's acting like it's some minor screw-up, like he borrowed my shirt without asking, so I blocked him. I didn't even respond. There was nothing left to say after that. I started getting calls and texts from random family members, uncles, cousins, people I haven't heard from in years, suddenly want to chime in, "Hey man, you got to let this go. Adam's your brother. You'll regret it if you cut him off. Family is family. I mean, are they all brainwashed? Or something? They kept family is family, and that somehow makes what Adam did okay." I ignored them all. It wasn't until a few days later that I found out Tina and Adam were still seeing each other. How did I find out? Because one of my coworkers saw them out together and decided to bring it up at work like it was no big deal. I was in the break room getting coffee when this guy Steve, I'll call him that even though that's not his real name, just walked up and said, "Hey man, I saw Tina and Adam together. Adam and Tina were together the other day, and they looked pretty cozy. What was that about?" I just stared at him. How do you even respond to something like that? I mumbled something about how we broke up, and he gave me an awkward look before backing off. But by that point, the damage was done. I couldn't even focus on work anymore. All I could think about was how Adam was walking around with Tina like nothing had happened. That's when I realized I couldn't stay here anymore. I couldn't keep working at a place where everyone knew about my messed up family. I couldn't stop running into people who had seen Adam and Tina together. It was like a constant reminder of how everything had gone to hell. So I started looking for apartments. I didn't care where, just somewhere far enough away that I wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. The next step was to figure out how to make sure my family never bothered me again. After the whole blow-up with my family, things got even worse. I wish I could say I was done with all the drama, but you know how it goes. I thought things were getting better a couple of weeks after I started looking for new apartments. I hadn't heard from my parents, which was a miracle in itself, and I was starting to get my head straight again. I was focusing on work, staying away from everyone who knew Adam and Tina, and trying to move on. Then one day, while I was working out on the punching bag at the gym, I was minding my own business. Because trust me, I had a lot of steam to blow off. I was in the middle of a pretty good workout when I heard someone call my name from behind me. I turned around and saw Adam standing there with that same smug look on his face. It's like the guy just doesn't know when to quit. I hadn't talked to him since that last call, and I didn't plan to ever talk to him again. But there he was, standing in my space like everything was fine. Before I could say anything, he smirked and said, "Look man, we need to talk." Talk about what? There's nothing to talk about. He knocked up my fiancée, so what else could I say? But instead of walking away, I stood there with my fists clenched, waiting for whatever crap he was about to say. Adam stepped closer and started talking about how we shouldn't let this come between us and how family is more important than some girl. I swear it took everything in me not to knock him out right there. The way he talked about Tina like she was just some random girl, not the person I was going to marry, made my blood boil. Then he said the thing that finally made me lose it. Broke me, I mean bro, it's not like she was really yours anyway, right? That's when I lost it completely. I didn't even think my body just moved. I swung at him and my fist connected with his face. The sound was, well, it was satisfying. He stumbled back holding his jaw and I could see the shock in his eyes. He didn't expect me to actually hit him, but here's the thing, I wasn't done. All the anger, the betrayal, everything that had been building up for months, years, even it all came flooding out. I grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him against the, I don't remember what I yelled, but it wasn't nice. By this point, people in the gym had started to notice, and I could see a couple of them moving toward us, but I didn't care. All I could think about was making sure Adam knew he had crossed the line for the last time. Before I could throw another punch, the gym staff jumped in and pulled us apart. Adam was holding his face, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping through me like I was ready for round two. But the staff wasn't having it. They started yelling about calling the cops. And that's when it hit me. If I kept going, this would turn into a legal mess, and I wasn't in the mood to deal with that on top of everything else, so I backed off. I grabbed my stuff and walked out of the gym without looking back. My heart was still racing and my mind was all over the place. But I knew if I stayed any longer, I'd do something I'd regret. I got in my car and just sat there for a minute trying to calm down. That's when my phone started buzzing. I glanced at the screen, and of course it was Adam. I called the cops, and that's when it hit me that if I kept going, this would turn into a legal mess. Honestly, I didn't want to deal with that on top of everything else, so I backed off. I grabbed my stuff and left the gym without looking back. My heart was still racing and my mind was all over the place. But I knew that if I stayed any longer, I would do something I would regret. I got in my car and sat there for a minute to calm down. That's when my phone started buzzing. I looked at the screen and, of course, it was Adam. I let it go to voicemail because I didn't want to hear what he had to say. But then, less than 5 minutes later, I got another call, this time from Tina. I wasn't going to answer it because I knew I shouldn't, but my brain was still running on pure adrenaline, and before I knew it, I had hit the answer button. Tina's voice came through the line frantic and angry. "What the hell, Jacob? You broke his nose. He might need surgery." I laughed. Couldn't help it. The idea that I'm the bad guy here after everything they did was just too much. "Oh, I'm sorry." I said that with sarcasm dripping from every word. Should I send him a get well card or maybe some flowers? She didn't like that. Tina started yelling at me about how selfish I was and how I didn't understand how hard this was for her. Can you believe that she cheated on me? Got pregnant by my brother. And I don't understand how hard this is for her? I didn't even let her finish. I hung up and blocked her number. I was done. I should have done it sooner, but part of me wanted some kind of closure, some apology or something, explanation or whatever, but I realized then that I wasn't going to get it. Tina and Adam weren't sorry. They were just mad I wasn't going along with their twisted version of family. Later that night, I got a message from one of my cousins. Turned out that word of the fight at the gym had spread pretty quickly. People were talking about it, not just within the family. Friends, co-workers, and everyone else were finding out what had happened. Great, just what I needed. More people knowing about my messed up life. My cousin Amy, who has always been on my sister, called to check on me. She said the family was going crazy, saying I had overreacted and made things worse. But Amy was one of the few who really understood. She knew how bad things had gotten between me, Adam, and my parents. She didn't buy into the whole family first thing they kept pushing. "You did what you had to do," she said. "Screw them. You deserve better than this." That helped, but it didn't change the fact that everything was spiraling out of control. My life was becoming this open secret with people. People were talking about me behind my back, and I couldn't go anywhere without someone giving me that look that said they wanted to ask me about what they heard but didn't want to seem nosy. I knew I had to leave. I couldn't stay in the same town and keep running into people who knew Adam and Tina. It was like a constant reminder of how everything had fallen apart. So I started making serious plans to leave. I didn't care where, just far enough away that I wouldn't have to deal with any of this crap anymore. Seattle might be the best choice. My company had an office there, and the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a good place to start over. I didn't know anyone there, which was exactly what I wanted. No one would know my story, no one would ask questions, and I could finally get some peace. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew I had to do it. I had to get away from Adam, Tina, my parents, and my whole family. Maybe then I could finally start to figure out how to put my life back together. After the fight at the gym, Tina yelled at me and I decided to move to Seattle. I thought things would finally calm down. I thought that if I just stayed out of their way and focused on getting out of this town, I could start over and leave everything behind, but of course nothing ever goes that smoothly. My family, Tina, and even random people in my life just couldn't let things go. For example, packing up my apartment should have been easy. Just box up my stuff, schedule the movers, and get the hell out. But the day after when I made my decision to move, my parents came to my house again. I guess they heard about my plans from one of my aunts or cousins. No one in my family can keep their mouth shut, so they thought they needed to talk some sense into me. I was sitting on my couch halfway through packing up my books when I heard the doorbell ring. I knew right away it was them. I have that sixth sense when it comes to my family. Sure enough, I looked through the peephole and there they were. My mom had a sad, pleading look on her face, and my dad was standing behind her with his usual disapproving frown. I really didn't want to open the door because of his usual disapproving frown, but I knew they wouldn't leave until I did. I opened it just a crack, and before I could say anything, my mom yelled, "You're really going to do this, Jacob? You're really going to leave your family?" It took all of my willpower not to slam the door in her face. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me because I didn't want them in my space. I leaned against the door and crossed my arms, waiting for whatever guilt trip they were about to give me. My mom kept saying, "You can't just run away from your problems. Moving across the country isn't going to solve anything. You need to stay and fix things with Adam." How do you even respond to that? It's like they didn't even hear what I said the last time we spoke. "I'm not running away," I told her, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm starting over. I don't need to fix things with Adam. I don't want anything to do with him or Tina or this family." At that point, my dad finally spoke up. "Jacob, this is crazy. You're being childish. You're throwing away your whole life over a mistake." There it was again. Mistake. Adam and Tina just tripped and fell into the situation, and I'm the jerk for being mad about it. I tried to reason with them, but they just kept saying the same thing over and over. Family is family, and you only get one brother. It was like talking to a brick wall. I finally gave up and said, "I'm moving, and that's final. You need to leave." At that point, my mom started crying, which is her go-to move when my dad just glared at me and said something that really got to me. "If you walk away from this, Jacob, don't expect us to come running back when you realize you made a mistake." I had to laugh at that, even though it was more out of anger than anything else. I told him I had made my choice and that if he didn't like it, that was his problem. Then I went back inside, locked the door, and stood there for a second listening to my mom's sobs fade as they walked back to their car. I could feel the anger building up inside me, but I was also so tired. Tired of fighting with them, tired of the guilt trips, and tired of everything. So they left, and I kept packing, trying to focus on getting out of there as quickly as possible. But of course, my family wasn't done messing with me. A few days later, I got a long, dramatic email from my aunt, the one who always gets involved in everyone's business. She basically said the same thing my parents had, that I was overreacting and needed to be the bigger person and make peace with Adam and Tina. She even had the nerve to say that Tina and Adam were going through a lot right now with the pregnancy and that I should find it in my heart to forgive them. I didn't respond. I couldn't even bring myself to type out a reply because I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing I said would change their minds. I just deleted the email and kept packing. At this point, I was so close to being done and getting out of there and leaving everything behind. I had a place lined up in Seattle. She even had the nerve to say that Tina and Adam were going through a lot right now with the pregnancy and that I should find it in my heart to forgive them. I didn't respond. I couldn't even bring myself to type out a reply because I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing I said would change their minds. I just deleted the email and kept packing. At this point, I was so close to being done, so close to getting out of there and leaving everything behind. I had a place lined up in Seattle. I had the movers scheduled and was counting down the days until I could finally put all this behind me. But then the last blow came the night before the movers were supposed to come. I got a letter in the mail from Tina. At first, I didn't recognize the handwriting, but when I opened the envelope and saw her name at the bottom, I felt sick. The letter was full of fake apologies and excuses. She went on and on about how sorry she was and how she didn't mean to hurt me. She said she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me, and that she hoped I could forgive her so we could all move on. She even sent me an ultrasound picture, as if that would make things better. I stared at that picture for a long time and thought about how this should have been our kid, not hers and Adam's. That was supposed to be our future, but instead I was packing up my life and moving across the country while she and Adam were probably picking out baby names and acting like they hadn't just ruined my whole world. I couldn't deal with it anymore, so I crumpled up the letter and threw it away. The next morning, I packed up the last of my things, said goodbye to the apartment, and drove to Seattle. I kept thinking about everything that had happened. Part of me thought I should have handled things differently, tried harder to make them see my side, or just walked away from my family sooner. But in the end, none of it mattered. I was starting over and leaving everything behind. The people who hurt me were gone, and I was ready to move on, or at least that's what I told myself. Update 2. I made it to Seattle. I thought that once I got here, everything would magically get better, like I'd cross the state line and everything would reset. But surprise, life doesn't work that way. The first few weeks after I moved were honestly kind of rough. Don't get me wrong, it felt good to be away from my family, Adam, Tina, and all of it, but it's strange how quiet things got. No one was banging on my door or calling me angry. Guilt trip emails. The chaos had been going on for so long that when it finally stopped, I didn't know what to do with myself. I found a nice place in Seattle, nothing fancy, but it's mine and that's what matters. I spent my first few nights just sitting on the couch, staring at the boxes I hadn't unpacked yet, trying to wrap my head around how quickly everything changed. One minute I'm engaged and about to get married, and the next I'm halfway across the country starting over. It was like I didn't even have time to process it. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was alone, and everything hit me at once. The first real slap in the face happened at work when my company moved me to the Seattle office so I wouldn't have to look for a new job. That was one less hetchy, at least. But on my first day, I met the team and had the usual awkward small talk. Most people were nice and polite, asking where I was from and what I did. But then at lunch, I overheard two coworkers whispering that they didn't know I could hear them. One of them said, "Hey, did you hear about the guy who punched his brother back in the other office? Something about his fiancée or whatever." My heart sank. I felt sick, like someone had just punched me in the gut. Apparently, my reputation had followed me here. The gossip from the old office had made its way across the country, and now people in Seattle knew my story, or at least their version of it. I tried to act like I didn't hear them, but it got to me. I heard two coworkers whispering that they didn't know I could hear them. One of them said, "Hey, did you hear about the guy who punched his brother in the other office? Something about his fiancée or whatever." My heart sank, and I felt sick, like someone had just punched me in the gut. Apparently, my reputation had followed me here. The gossip from the old office had made its way across the country, and now people in Seattle knew my story, or at least their version of it. I tried to act like I didn't hear them, but it got to me. I thought I was getting a fresh start, but I was still stuck in the same mess, only now it was with strangers. It felt like I couldn't escape what happened that night when I went home and just sat there staring at my phone instead of unpacking. I hadn't blocked my family's numbers, but I probably should have. Part of me kept waiting for a message or a call, hoping that someone would finally say something that didn't make me feel bad, but nothing happened. My phone was silent, and for the first time, I realized how alone I actually was. A few days later, I got an email from Emma, Tina's younger sister. I'd almost forgotten she existed in the middle of all this chaos. Emma had been the only one on Tina's side who actually reached out to me and tried to be understanding. She didn't defend her sister's actions. If anything, she seemed just as disgusted as I was. Her email was short, just a few lines saying she'd heard about the move, and she hoped I was doing okay. She also mentioned that Tina and Adam were still together and that Tina's pregnancy was they were acting like this was some kind of fairy tale ending on all of her social media, pretending that none of the betrayal and drama had happened. I didn't respond to Emma right away. What was I supposed to say? That it still hurt, that hearing about Tina and Adam playing house made me sick, that every time I thought I was moving on, I got pulled right back into the same old mess? Instead, I just stared at her email, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach tighten. It wasn't until the next day that I finally replied. I kept it short. I just thanked her for checking in and told her I was fine, even though I wasn't. I didn't want to talk about all my feelings because what was the point? Talking about it wasn't going to change anything. But no matter how hard I tried to push it all down, the weight of everything kept coming back. I'd be sitting at my desk at work and out of nowhere I'd think about Adam and Tina and how they were probably picking out cribs or something in a baby store and living their best life while I was stuck. Picking up the pieces of mine. A couple of weeks later, I went out to grab a drink after work, just trying to get out of my head for a bit. I ended up at this small bar a few blocks from my place. It was quiet, not too crowded, just the way I like it. I grabbed a beer, sat down at the bar, and tried to let my mind relax for once, but wouldn't you know it, not even an hour and some guy sitting next to me strikes up a conversation. He seemed friendly enough at first, and we started chatting about work life. You know, the usual small talk. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "So what's your story? Why did you come to Seattle?" I hesitated. Should I tell him the truth or make up some crap about wanting a change of scenery? I didn't know what to say, so I took another sip of my beer and went with the safe answer. I needed a fresh start. But then he kept asking where I was from, why I left, and all that. It was like he could sense there was more to the story and wouldn't let it go until I spilled the beans. So I told him not the whole thing, but the gist of it. My brother screwed me over and I had to get out. Out now. I'm here. His eyes got wide and he just nodded like he'd heard some kind of wild gossip. That's rough, man, he said, but at least you're away from it now, right? I just nodded and gave a half-hearted smile. Yeah, I was away from it, but was I really? Because no matter how far I ran, the weight of what happened, the betrayal, the anger, it followed me every time I tried to move on there. It was like some shadow I couldn't shake. After that, I finished my drink, paid the tab, and headed home. That night I lay in bed staring at the I was lying on the floor, thinking about everything that had happened and everything I had lost. I thought moving to Seattle would help, and I thought that being far away from my family would make it easier to move on. But now I'm not so sure. Part of me feels like I'll never really escape what happened, no matter how far I go. The betrayal will always be there, reminding me of everything I lost. Maybe that's just the way it's going to be. So here I am, in a new city, with a new job and a new life. But I can't escape the idea that I'm still carrying the same old baggage no matter where I go, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to let it go.